This one is for you jazz lovers. I had an opportunity to talk to Emmet Cohen, who's an accomplished pianist and educator. The biggest reason you should listen to this interview is his talent in bringing together diverse musicians from around the world to play on his YouTube channel, Emmet's Place. This is a must-see. Check it out. The pandemic kind of set you on your heels. And
it was a new phase for sure.
And it was from there that you thought about all of this and you developed what you would call Emmet's Place, where you hail from your apartment in New York City, which is very interesting to me. You decided...
Looking at it here.
Pardon?
I said you're looking at it here.
Yeah. I think it's very cool. And you brought so much notoriety to many, many jazz musicians, which is so interesting to me because I get the feeling that it's not just about you, but it's the expression of these other people that you've asunder to bring them together into one place.
At the beginning of the pandemic, we flew back from Winnipeg. I remember our last gig there where everyone was putting hand sanitizer in their hands and then giving you a handshake. Like, what we're supposed to do now, there's a lot of uncertainty. No one knew what was going on. And by the time we got back to New York, the entire year calendar was canceled. All of the big shows we had planned for years. And I remember, just feeling pretty distraught at every cancellation until there was like a threshold where everything was canceled. And we're like, oh, actually we can relax now because the whole world is just in the same boat. And so that was a moment of relaxation there where we're like, okay, well, we're all at this ground level now. What do we want to do now?
Olha que coisa mais linda, mais cheia de graça, ela menina que vem e que passa num doce balanço a caminho do mar. Moça do corpo dourado do sol de Ipanema, o céu balançado é mais que um poema, é a coisa mais linda que eu já vi passar.
I have wonderful friends who all live down the street from me in Harlem. It's one of the most fertile places for artists and musicians and thinkers and just creators and dancers and people who play on Broadway and the whole thing. I can barely go outside without seeing someone who I know or who I should say hi to or something like that. It's just an amazing place here, and I think it has been for the last 100 years. And so my two bandmates live down Russell Hall and Kyle Poole live down the street, and I said, "You want to come up and we'll at least hang out?" Russell, the bass player, said, "Well, we should do what we know how to do best, which is play." So I said, "Okay, why don't we play?" So we got together in the apartment, which is right behind me here, and we lugged the drums down the street and up the 5-floor walk up. And Russell brought his bass, and I figured out a little bit about streaming and just kind of turned on Facebook Live, and more than 1,000 people tuned in at once. And by the time the thing had run its course over a week or so, we got about 40,000 views on it. I'm fortunate to be touring a lot of my life, and one of the things that you get to do when you're in a fortunate position is to create opportunities for others. And I realized that was one of the great gifts that I was able to achieve in the pandemic was sometimes these musicians, especially in my generation, they hadn't played a gig in 6 months or 8 months in 2020, or hadn't played with people in an entire year. In this moment, that we're capturing on camera was the first time that they were playing with other musicians in a very long stretch of time, and
Right.
I think, it made it just more meaningful, that we were capturing that on video and on audio and presenting that to the world. And it was more than just, okay, we're playing the notes and the rhythms and having a good time. It was like, no, this is a necessity, and we need to play, and I think people related to that aspect of it. There were many donations at the beginning of the stream. We put up donation links, and people were so generous.
Oh,
And after a few months, though, the donations started to wean a little bit, and I created this membership club on my website. It's called Exclusive, the Emmet Cohen Exclusive Club, and that's basically was another way to support the live streams and to support all the things that we were doing. And then as a third tier of trying to make it work commerce wise, we started taking donations for the individual streams, and a lot of times that would mean that the people who were sponsoring the show got to sit in the house and watch it live. Or they could sponsor in honor of somebody, or maybe there was a musician they really wanted to see on the show, and so they would say, well, I would like to use the sponsorship money to sponsor Patrick Bartley or Cyril A. May or an artist that really meant something to them. And so there were like different ways that we made it work, and of course I did my best to compensate musicians and the tech people and everyone else involved, and we have a little mini economy that goes on here, and that was meant to support musicians in the time of need.
Quand il me prend dans ses bras, qu'il me parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours, et ça me fait quelque chose.
what's interesting to me is that when you guys get together, now I have to ask, are you pre-rehearsed, or do you just lunge in and whatever happens?
Well, it's a combination of all those things. I've been friends with a lot of these musicians for many years, and I was in New York for 8 years leading up until the pandemic, and I had a weekly gig at Smoke. I would play bi-weekly at Smalls at one point. We'd play a lot of week-long runs at Dizzy's, late night things where we'd play with other musicians or invite musicians. So, a lot of those people I've played with before, so we usually started with the repertoire that we had hit before. Sometimes different musicians wanted to do it different ways, so some people would send me music in advance, like, okay, this is what I want to do, or a list of songs, and then I would say, okay, well, we have a particular vibe on these songs, so maybe we could come together on those and find some common ground. Other times we barely talked about it at all and just got together a few minutes before the session and kind of talked about some ideas and just hit it. Some other times, it was a combination of all those things. And so, we really relied on the fact that we'd been rehearsing our whole lives for this moment. And the language of it all, the way we come together and speak that language is more important than like, okay, we're going to play this piece, we're going to play this piece. It's like the way we play together is almost more important than the repertoire.
Yeah.
Sometimes we had set lists, a lot of times we have tune lists, and we maybe pick the first two that we're going to do, and after that, what do you want to do next? And we make it a conversation. It's like we're playing in the living room. It's not, it doesn't have to be that formal.
That is so cool. You've headlined at the Lincoln Center, Jazz Lincoln Center. You've been at Village Vanguard, Birdland, Newport Jazz Festival, Monterey Festival, Dizzy's Club, Coca-Cola, the Cotton Club in Tokyo. You have tens of millions of views, and to boot, you've been on Good Morning America. And that's so, to me, unusual for jazzers as it goes.
They treated us really nicely, and I think, they're always looking for a story.
Yeah.
The story that we had was, that we still have is that we're doing this Harlem rent party in Harlem in the same spot 100 years later. We're in the Roaring 20s again. And last time it was prohibition, and they put rules and regulations on restrictions on what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And it was the same thing here, where you're not allowed to gather, you're not allowed to go out to eat, you can't go hear music, you can't do anything. And once again, Harlem was the place where the soul and the life popped up. And
Right.
back in the day, people had to come over to the apartment. And this time we were able to do it safely virtually to people all over the world. And it turns out now that we're visiting different countries and parts of the world, we go to Japan, and the people in Japan have watched every single episode and are really excited about what we're doing. And same with Singapore, or same with Thailand, or other places in Europe or South America.
Don't throw bouquets at me. Don't please my folks too much. Don't laugh at my jokes too much. People will say we're in love. Don't smile and gaze at me. Your sighs are so like mine. Your eyes mustn't glow like mine. People will say we're in love.
And you've been to Cuba, correct?
I was just there last week. Yeah.
Wow. My mother was raised in Cuba, so I have a question regarding Cuba. Has there been any political friction relative to music, or is it just a neutralized affair where, hey, it's just music and whatever? But is there anything to that where there's a sensitivity issue regarding politics?
I think a lot of people are very sensitive about it, and I knew that going there would be a touch and go issue. For me, I tried to kind of make it more about the individual people that I would touch by going there, and
Right.
I know I got some pushback about people not being pleased that I would go there and play music that is supposed to represent freedom and democracy in a place that doesn't.
Were they the average citizen, or were those politicos of sorts, or
other musicians, people who feel strongly about the issue? I was asked to go with some musicians who, a pianist died, Emmet Gonzalez, who his main goal was to affect the people and try to bring some joy and some love and some good vibes to his people. And we did some educational master classes for students, and it was a real. It was just a real opportunity to touch some individual people who live there who may not have opportunities to access the things that we can access in other parts of the world. So that's what it was really about for me.
Yeah, that's cool. During those years of growing with music, was there, through that transition, anything that impressed you in particular with players or times, or was there anything that just hit you so that you knew this was the right course?
It was a very gradual thing. I started playing classical piano very early, and it was a challenge for me, just because I think I was a little more creative and a little more all over the place, and I enjoyed making my own stuff up and improvising. And
Are you more of an improviser than a reader? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, of course.
You are, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm an improvising jazz musician. We almost never use music on gigs or anything like that. I think Suzuki piano is a method of learning by ear, and then you put the notes later. So I was always thinking about what I was hearing first, rather than.
And who? Excuse me, but who are you listening to piano-wise mostly growing up?
Well, I played classical piano growing up and was listening to that stuff. My dad would play some Sinatra and other things around the house, and he would get interested in a pianist like Marcus Roberts and play with Cyrus Chestnut and play some albums and stuff. But I remember he took me to hear Monty Alexander, and I just fell in love with the feeling of swing and joy that he had, and I was like, I want to recreate that. And he became one of my big influences, and through him I was led to Ray Brown and Benny Green and Christian McBride and this whole other world. And I grew up in Montclair, New Jersey, down the street from Billy Hart, and was a masterful drummer, played with Miles Davis and Kirby and others. And Christian McBride also lived in town, and so then all of a sudden I was around these musicians, and I got to see or run into in certain settings, and started playing some Hammond B3 organ at this jam session at the Cecil's Club. Cecil Brooks III had a club in West Orange, and I would go there, and there would be no piano at the jam, and I learned to play B3 and go over to the club and practice after school, and so got interested in different things. And I also played some clarinet, saxophone.
Really?
In band, and so I was taking some lessons, and through that tried to play some Charlie Parker solos and John Coltrane things, and was listening to that through the eyes of like trying to get it there. I never really had the vibe on those instruments where I'd want to pursue them forever, but super helpful to know what that's like, as a pianist playing with a saxophone player or writing for those instruments, to be able to imagine it in the fingers, and but fell in love with bebop through there, and then I got a chance to go hear Cedar Walton and Barry Harris, and heard some of the masters and Jimmy Heath, and finally got a chance to play with some of those guys and be around those guys, and that led me into this vast world of really just trying to explore and figure out every little detail of what's going on in all of this music. It's such detailed music, and you can listen to a record 1,000 times and notice something brand new each and every time you hear it.
Is there any place that you have not been that you would like to go, relative to music?
The world is so big. One of my favorite parts of being a musician is to travel and just see other cultures in the world. And the Emmett's Place model has kind of turned into something that we can take on the road and invite people. So, for instance, we went to Korea and we did an Emmett's Place there, and invited some of the top Korean musicians to come join us and be part of our presentation.
Well, Emmett, I think that's why I've been so impressed with you, because you want to do a reach out. It's not just been about you, but it's about educating other people. So that's been very impressive to me. I think that my last question for you, my friend, and you know you've heard this one before and you've been asked it before, but what suggestions might you have for budding musicians?
I think that all the basic things apply, practice as hard as possible, but also practice as smart as possible.
What does that mean?
Well, we live in an age of distractions. It's like, you practice for 5 minutes and then you have to check your social media and your phone, and there's things going on like all around you. And it's I grew up in a time before a lot of that stuff. So I feel fortunate that I didn't have to compete with algorithms and things that were scientifically generated to get my attention. But to just practice smart, to realize that, there are many different parts of music, and you want to explore them all when you're young, but then you want to figure out what community you belong to and contribute to that community and build that community. And that's where the true value comes from, especially as an improvising jazz musician. You want other people to play with, and you want people, especially when you're young, you want people to call you for gigs, and then you call people for gigs. And it's like this exchange where you're not just doing everything by yourself, and to find the joy in the music. There's a lot of music that goes on that's so serious and so somber and so sad, and which is all good, and every kind of music is valid. But if you have the opportunity to uplift people or change their lives in a certain way, what does it take to get there? And something I noticed a lot in Cuba, like there's so much sadness around and poverty, but the music is so uplifting, and everyone plays to celebrate life, and so that that the music is bigger than just the notes and the rhythms. It's about what you can do for the world.
I do appreciate it, my friend.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Dan.
Talk to you soon.